Hello everyone, welcome to another community call. Let me start sharing my screen. So can you see my screen? Great. So today our community call is about the Mozilla community, how it started, how it evolved, and where it is going. We have some great people here to talk about the community that have, I don't know, I think 40 years of experience between them. So we have Mike Hoye, which is a senior staff engineer project manager, and I think he was the first engineering community manager at Mozilla. We have Asa Dotzler, who joined the Mozilla community before Firefox was even a thing. So hello, welcome Asa. And now he's senior staff product manager for Firefox accessibility. Then we have Konstantina here, that has been working with our global community for more than 10 years, and now is a senior program manager, communities, staff program manager for communities. Apologies. And then it's me, I'm Francesca. I'm a community manager in the community programs team. Welcome, everyone. So we are going to briefly give you a welcome to the Mozilla community, tell you some community highlights, and then I will pass the word to Esa that will start talking about how the community started. Then to Mike, who is going to talk about how the community evolved, with talking about specifically about the CPT and moderation, and then Konstantina, who is going to talk about the future of the community. And then we will open Q&A. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat in the Matrix room, and I will collect them and ask them for you. So if you're new to the Mozilla community, you're very welcome. We hope you will like it here. There is a bit of everything for everyone in the Mozilla community. These are 3 projects, but there are many more. There is, for example, the support community, the MDN WebTops community, and the place where to give feedback and ideas on Mozilla product and projects, which is Mozilla Connect. So if you want to know more, please subscribe to our newsletter, check our /contribute page, and get to know other Mozillians in metrics. All those links are in the description of this video. Please remember, all our spaces are controlled by our code of conduct. So I want to give a few community news. ModFest is coming. We have early bird tickets are available, so please have a look at them. And the call for proposal is nearly closing, so if you want to do it, you better hurry up. And the call for volunteer is open, so if you would like to volunteer at ModFest, please have a look. Apologies. Apart from that, we just published an article where we talk about how community contributes to products. So in the Our Axe blog post. So that's very interesting article. Please have a look at it. And then we want to thank our volunteers who are also parents and who give us some tips about how they keep their kids safe online. And then we made a video of it, which is in the same channel you're watching this video. So you can go have a look at it. And now I stop talking and I will pass the word to Esa.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm going to share my screen here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm going to take you way back. When I was in college in the mid-90s, some friends of mine introduced me to the free software movement and Linux. I'll be honest and say that while I was intrigued by the ideas behind the free software movement, when I actually saw I appear to be having some technical difficulties. Let me try to share again.
I can share for
Asa,
you.
can we share your slides for you from our end? That might take the burden off of your connection a little bit.
I should have a good connection here, so let me try one more time. And if that doesn't work, I'll send my slides.
Okay,
Looking okay?
We can see you now.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Sorry about the technical difficulties there. I'll start over. When I was in college in the mid-90s, some friends of mine introduced me to the free software movement and Linux. And I'll be honest and say that while I was intrigued by the ideas behind the free software movement, when I actually saw Linux, I was completely turned off. It was a command line, and I was a Windows and Mac user. And though I was familiar with the command line, our college email system was all command line interface, I really wasn't interested in Linux when I had Mac System 7 and Windows 95 available on the college computer labs. And later on in 1998, I heard that Netscape was going to become free software. And I was like, hey, that's that really cool approach to making software that my friends had told me about, but this time applied to a program I actually use and like. I'm going to be a part of that. This title slide was taken from the words of Jim Barksdale, Netscape's president and CEO, when he announced Mozilla. He was calling on me to join the Netscape community and help make their next version. How cool was that? My name is Asa Dotzler, and I've been part of the Mozilla community since 1998. This brief history of Mozilla's early communities covers the time from Netscape's announcement of the communicator source code release through the early successes of Firefox. Soon after the initial announcement about Netscape going free came the announcement of Mozilla.org and the project to build a community of participation around Netscape's browser. I read all of this with great excitement, but I should have seen the warning signs. Maybe it was my excitement, but I didn't see that they weren't actually looking for the creative energies of the entire net community, and they were instead really only looking for programmers to help them compete with Microsoft's much larger engineering team. When the release day finally arrived, I figured it out. Netscape and Mozilla's leadership team, who were all Netscape employees at the time, weren't going to let Mozilla distribute binaries. It was a source code only release. You see, Netscape didn't want to open the possibility of competition from their own project. If IBM or Sun or Red Hat or some other company used the Mozilla source code to compete with Netscape, that was probably okay. I suspect Netscape was fine with others covering these minority operating systems, leaving them with Windows and Mac. But Mozilla itself certainly wasn't going to compete with Netscape on their primary platforms. And this is taken from the brand new Mozilla.org Getting Involved page. I'm sure to the programmers, this was really quite exciting. But to me, realizing there were no binaries to download, no way to get my foot in the door, and that Netscape wasn't really interested in my help, it was a huge disappointment. Nevertheless, I persisted. I started to dig around, figuring out that there was some way to get involved with this project. And this is what I found. This was the early community platform. Not much for a non-programmer like me. But from the newsgroups and IRC, I soon learned that there were others like me who wanted to participate, who wanted to be a part of this groundbreaking project. And we began to organize and to try to push our way in. Thanks mostly to some programmers at Netscape and a couple outside who would occasionally post binaries to the web, some of us non-programmers were able to start playing with it and giving feedback in the newsgroups in Bugzilla. Before too long, Mozilla's leadership started to see some value, and they managed to convince Netscape that producing regular binaries could be done without Mozilla becoming competition. As long as Mozilla.org made it clear that the binaries were for testing purposes only, it would be allowed. They actually time-bombed the binaries. That is, after 30 days, they would just stop working. But that opened the floodgates. Once there were regular binaries available, lots of people who were a lot like me started to show up, give those binaries a spin, and offer various kinds of feedback. Having been there from pretty early on, I'd already learned some basics, like what the developers wanted in a good bug report, and what proper newsgroup etiquette was. And so I began to share that knowledge with many of the newcomers who were showing up to the project. Mitchell Baker, the head of Mozilla.org at the time, and our CEO today, saw that work, and she offered me a job with staff at Mozilla.org, the Mozilla leadership team. Along with testing and bug reporting, other areas of the community began to grow, demonstrating real value to both Netscape and Mozilla. The ports community, those are the people responsible for making Mozilla compile on the many operating systems that Netscape wasn't focused on. The localizers, who were translating Mozilla into languages that weren't Netscape priorities. And the emerging community of Mozilla and web standards advocates at Mozilla Zine and other blogs, all led to a bunch of non-programmers coming to the project, and they were providing a lot of value. As a freshly minted Netscape employee working with the Mozilla leadership team, I decided that I wouldn't just focus on organizing the quality assurance and testing community as I'd been hired to do, but that I'd work on expanding participation opportunities for everyone that wanted to help. I worked with Netscape and volunteers to try to distribute various projects that had previously been internal to Netscape. The year I got hired, Netscape decided they were going to ship Netscape 6 before the Mozilla leadership thought the code was ready. And so Brendan and I put together a team called Drivers at Mozilla.org. This is the team that would define the Mozilla 1.0 roadmap, something distinct from Netscape's plans. The Drivers team distributed most of the work to the module owners, who were the programmer tech leads for all of the components of the Mozilla suite. But in an attempt to harness more of the community power that was so evident to me, I also made sure that anyone with a Bugzilla account could participate by nominating features and fixes for inclusion in Mozilla 1.0. And those features and fixes nominated by our community would be evaluated by Drivers right alongside the recommendations from the module owners. This was Mozilla's first project management community, and there were half a dozen, maybe a dozen regular contributors who scoured the bug database to figure out what were the most important features and fixes we could add to Mozilla 1.0 from a standpoint that wasn't the same as the module owners, who were all focused very heavily on API stability and performance and security and memory usage and things like that. No, instead, we had the beginnings of a community who were suggesting what users might care about. About that same time, a whole new project and community called MozDev launched, and it would be the home to many Mozilla-related projects, from themes and extensions, though we didn't call them that back then, to ports and localizations, to non-browser apps built on Gecko and Zool. This new ecosystem brought lots more people into the Mozilla project, many of whom were not C++ programmers. Some were mostly focused on their independent MozDev projects, but plenty of them also wanted to bring their skills to Mozilla and influence its direction. And MozDev had a wide variety of contributors, from designers to product managers to people with expertise in marketing and other areas. By 2001, it was becoming increasingly clear that Netscape and Mozilla's goals were not well aligned. And the Mozilla leadership started thinking about what it would mean for us to ship products and not just host the project for Netscape to package up and distribute. If we were going to do that, though, we were going to need even more expansive community participation, because we wouldn't be able to depend on Netscape for functions like product management, user experience design, and marketing. As we came to the launch of Mozilla 1.0, we were still on the fence, though. We recruited people and built teams for the website and promotion. We sought help for documentation and user support and other things. But the release was still positioned mainly as a technology demonstration and not quite an end user product. And just as we were shipping Mozilla 1.0, the first release of Mozilla that sort of wanted users and not just testers, the projects that would eventually be called Firefox and Thunderbird were starting. Also that year, us Netscapers learned that AOL, our big bosses on the East Coast, were getting into bed with Microsoft and no longer had a need for Netscape and Gecko. Now it wasn't just a nice to have. If Mozilla was going to live on after Netscape's end, we needed a community that could cover all of the bases. A year later, Netscape was shuttered and the Mozilla Foundation was born. We transitioned from the Mozilla Suite to the increasingly popular standard standalone Firefox and Thunderbird apps. We knew, however, that there was no way our staff of about 10 people on our minuscule budget was enough to make Firefox and Thunderbird successful. So we began a more serious effort to expand our community. Working with several interested design volunteers, we launched the Mozilla Visual Identity team to help us with the look and feel of our new apps and the website. working with some people who actually got their start on political campaigns and web-based fundraising platforms, and a couple of volunteers who had marketing background, we launched Spread Firefox to promote the new apps. Working with a student program at Oregon State University and some people from the broader Floss community, we built up a set of mirror servers and software to load balance across those, so we wouldn't be crushed by the downloads or have to pay a fortune for hosting. And of course, we didn't stop there. Interest in Firefox and Thunderbird, and also the Mozilla Suite, which had shipped several dot releases by that time, was growing dramatically. And it included motivated communities and leaders from around the world. There was real momentum in Europe and China and Japan. So the Mozilla Foundation helped set up community hubs in those regions. And we also made a renewed push on building some communities that we'd tried and failed at in the past, some of them several times. But this time we did it with more gusto and more focused effort. We launched the add-ons community at AMO, a web docs community called MDC and later renamed to MDN, and a user support community at Sumo, and more. I'd actually planned to wrap up this talk around 2004 with Firefox 1.0 on the previous slide, but I wanted to mention these other communities that we were able to make successful because while we tried to get them going before, some dating back as early as 1999 and 2000, we really didn't try hard enough in the early days. When we finally devoted the resources to making them happen, instead of treating them as nice-to-have additions, they took off. It of course helped that Firefox was successful and brought so many new people into the project. But I think the main reason that after years of trying, we finally got those communities going was because we had to. We had no choice. Mozilla leadership and a subset of our users knew this, and they came together to make it happen. And this is what I want to leave you all with. I think we're again at a point in our history where we can't allow ourselves to think that a robust and broadly capable community is just a nice to have. For Mozilla to continue to fulfill its mission and manifesto, a broad-based community contributing on all fronts is a necessity. And to make this happen, Mozilla has to invest more, and more of our users will need to become active participants. Many of you all are already leaders who can help make that happen. And together, I believe we can meet that challenge. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you very much, Asa. I just looked through the questions. There are some of the things better at the end since they talk about what we're going to do in the future, but there are a couple that are related to what you said. So there were a lot of people that say that the Dino logo brought back memories and commented they have t-shirts with that. And people also want me to advise people who are watching this video to watch Code Rush. And the community apparently prepares subtitles in a lot of languages for that. So you can watch it in a lot of languages. So that is great. I think some of the other questions I'm going to answer later on at the end of this talk, but let me just have a quick look. Yes, I think these are, Cairo said that he loved the line, this technology could fall in the right hand, that they often was under that logo. So yeah, this talk brought a lot of people down memory lane. But let's go to another part of how the Mozilla community evolved, talking about our CPG and effective moderation, which is what Michael, better known as Hoye to a lot of people, is going to talk about.
Traditionally, I believe it's pronounced M-Hoye around the organization, but Hoye is, I'll take it. It's a new variation on the theme. So I have there's a bit of a story here, and I want to emphasize that this story is mostly not about me. There's a tremendous amount of work that's been done here at Mozilla around community and community safety and inclusivity in particular that I stood next to and I sometimes helped, but the bulk of the lifting is done by some people who I'd like to talk to you about today. By way of background, my own personal experience leading up to this was that I was hired by Mozilla the better part of a decade ago as our first engineering community manager at a time when the idea of a community manager for an open source project or for even companies in general was a relatively sort of rare, unusual thing. And we brought me on at the time because we had gotten to a point where the community, it was sort of understood that the community was everybody's responsibility, but practically speaking, that meant that it wasn't anybody's responsibility, right? And we knew collectively and culturally, and Asa can attest that this was important, this was a critical thing, but we didn't have a mechanism in the institution or a staff like devoted to understanding and devoted to recognizing why it was important and what we could do to make it better, particularly from the engineering side of things. This growth of the community at the time, particularly from the dawn of the Mozilla project up and through I joined in, the cultural roots, I should say, of open source participation at the time were very much rooted in a modest participation in industry, some participation, a large participation from academia, as open source participation grew and sort of became widely popular. And there was another second part of that, which is not just the cultural origins of of open source as a thing, but also the economic origins of the ability to participate in open source, right? And I'm just mentioning these things because they're sort of the origin story of the community in a context, in that open source as a practice dated to a time when computing as a thing was expensive, right? Your ability to access computational resources cost a lot of money, and there was an awful lot of filters between the common member of, the common man or woman of society, and the internet, right? And computing resources, and even having a computer at the time was a privilege. And so people mostly came into the open source environment with a number of filters that already protected them from the vagaries of the world. Some of those were like corporate hiring practices. Some of those were academic admissions. Some of those were just the nature of economics. A computer that cost $5,000 or $4,000 and did very little apart from being a computer, and certainly didn't have a network connection at the time. Those were rare things at the day. And the culture that emerged of open source at the time very much reflected that. That is to say that it was very libertarian, very knock around in the sense that young, privileged people, mostly young, privileged white men, could have discussions, right, in a way that claimed to be meritocratic, because the things that prevented you from noticing that it wasn't actually a meritocracy, or that it indeed was a function of privilege, were a long way away. They were hidden from you in other rooms, in other buildings, in other departments. And that is sort of the original sin of open source culture in general, and in many ways, Mozilla's open source culture as well. Like, the project was born in that era, and its participation and its culture were born in that era as well. I was brought on in around 2013 at a time when the organization was starting to realize that culture was that software was a product of your culture. And starting to realize that having a large community and dealing with some of the difficult and thorny actors within the community was proving to be a burden, proving to be difficult. And the interesting part of that experience for me was that as I worked here for a couple of months, proposed some initiatives that were intended to both grow and expand our community in different directions, we also sort of realized as an organization that the quality of that experience mattered, right? And that was a very strange realization at the time, because this was not just before we had the CPG, like a set of laid out standards for this, but it was also before we, as computing as a wide cultural field, had a set of language around how to describe participation and the experience of it in ways that we now find very, very relevant. Like this was before we had notions of before inclusivity was really a word, before the idea of community accessibility was really an idea. And in particular, before the idea of social toxicity had really taken root as a way we could discuss the experience of being a part of open source as a project and being a part of Mozilla. The other part of that, the other part of the question there was that we have this is that the evolution of open source, of course, was taking off rapidly at the same time. One of the challenges that we faced then and that we face now is that open source as a practice and as a process essentially won, right? Our company and our community was born at a time when if you wanted to have, if you're a smart person who wants to have global impact through software and through community participation, you've got essentially four choices. You've got the GNU project, you've got the Apache project, you've got the Linux kernel, and there's us, right? And of the four of those things, two of them really have a manifesto that resonates with people. And ours at the time was certainly the easiest to get involved in, right? It had a compelling message. We have a compelling mission in the manifesto that is just and open. And we have, and we have the software, we have the communities, and we're willing to invest in them. But those, unbeknownst to us, or at least at the time, we didn't also realize that these, the process of growth there would come with a great deal of challenges. One of which was that, that openness and that manifesto, and that history of privilege in our discussions, in our culture, that history of sort of the quasi-libertarian put up or shut up. We have a manifesto, right? We have the mission, and the mission is more important than your feelings, right? Because it's a mission. Right? That led us to a point where the tone of participation at the time had become unsustainable. Even without words to describe it, even without a process to address it, we got to a point where the mission was very important. How we treated each other wasn't very important. And we broke a lot of good people on that wheel, right? People who believed, and to this day still do, in the importance of the mission, in the value of the work that we're doing here, both to empower people and to free people from the community, to empower people to participate in global society, global culture through the web. But that came at the cost of having to deal with Mozilla, the culture as it stood at the time. And when I say we didn't have words for that, what I mean is that when it finally came time for people who, after I'd built a few relationships, after we'd been here for a while and had a sort of a trusted perspective on how to talk to people and what we could do with community to help them grow, people started coming to me and saying, there's this person, right? I'm not going to name them because that would be unkind. And I would like to think that we're past that now. But some of our developers started coming to me and saying, there's this person, a contributor. They do a lot. They're a very high value contributor for us. They do a ton all over the project, and I can't work with them anymore. I just can't live like this. And that became that single thing, the notion of having to stop a community member from contributing, from participating, was unheard of. Not just for culturally unheard of, but also this is at odds with our fundamental identity of openness, our fundamental identity that anyone can participate, because we had never taken account of the costs of allowing anyone to participate, of allowing anyone to have a voice, no matter what the externalities of their voice happen to be. And so that was a very challenging time, certainly for me personally, and to be able to figure out how to drive the cultural change around the organization to this idea that not everything is okay, not all voices can be heard, not all voices can be equal, and that we need to make changes here for the health of the organization. And this process took a great deal of internal discussion. It took a great deal of information gathering. It took a great deal of internal politicking. And even then, we were really, really reluctant to make this kind of statement. And it ended up being initially a very small thing. We would say, you can't talk to people like this. And their answer was, why? Who's going to stop me? Right? There's no rules here against it, right? My code should speak for itself. That kind of answer. You're familiar with that now. You know this kind of dialogue because you've met this person, right? You've met them in your life. You've met them in our jobs. And the process of getting us as an organization to this realization took a really long time. And we really, really didn't want to do this. And I should say that we put an enormous amount of effort into helping this person in a way that would not force us to make decisions about Mozilla, and would force us to make decisions about inclusivity and participation and what we wanted that to be and what it said about us. My employer, my boss at the time, Benjamin Smedberg, who was just the kindest person you would ever want to meet, smart in a way that is hard to describe, offered, after a lot of back and forth, to personally mentor this contributor through the process of being a healthy contributor, of being a decent human being to everyone else in the organization. And that didn't take. It just, the offer of help was rejected. And so finally, we had to, after a great deal of consensus, say, you can't be a part of Mozilla anymore. And the follow-up from that was fascinating, because one of the things that we all sort of know now about abusive people is that to most people, they're fine, right? Most people find that behavior acceptable. Not that behavior, I should say, but most people don't see it. The reason most abusers get away with being abusive for a long time is because they're great to almost everybody, except the people they're being abusive to. And so they have this support network of people they've been great to all this time. After documenting at enormous length all of the reasons that this person had to be put out of the community, I still spent the next 2 months going back to our employees at the time, to our colleagues, to our community members, who all insisted on me being personally accountable for this. And I explained to them this, okay, why did you do this? They'd say to me, who are you to put this person out? And I would give them this long Google Doc full of the examples. These are all the reasons that we had to do this. This was the cost of this. This is all the things you didn't see. And the challenge there, of course, is when you do this in a community, when you start to get to this point of establishing cultural norms, the biggest defenders of that person who you are trying to put out will be the people who know that they are next in line if this kind of standard of behavior takes root. They're the people who know they'll be, the people who know that they're doing the same thing, but just slightly less so. So after we did that for a while, after that 2 months, people would come back after this person was no longer a part of Mozilla. And the difference in their quality of experience, this is what made it worthwhile for me. And this is one of the high points of my tenure here as a job. People would come in knowing that they didn't have to dread their inbox in the morning, knowing that they did not have to be anxious about the next time this person was in the room and going to speak up, right? And what happened immediately, not immediately, but within weeks, like the mood of the entire community changed. It's like suddenly having clean running water and penicillin. Like you may have strong feelings about it, you may not, but you're not going back to not having it. The second time we had to do that, the second toxic contributor who was there defending the first one, everyone came back and said in the same vein, oh, is this like that first one? And the second answer there was, yeah, it was. And so all of those discussions that took hours and hours and hundreds of people, not literally hundreds, many dozens of people, all of those decisions took minutes or seconds. Yeah, it was like that. Oh, okay. The third time we did that, oh, that guy? Yeah, screw that guy. We're glad that guy's gone, right? It is an enormous blessing to be having been in a position to be able to make this change. But it is also a position of enormous power, right? We're going to be revisiting this question in a couple of minutes, but the notion of moderation, of community safety, is an exercise of power, right? And that fact matters when we are talking about a company like ours that believes in decentralization, that believes in pushing power, in pushing decision-making, believes that those things should go to the edges wherever we can, right? Since that happened, two things needed to occur that exist as a check on that power. First thing is, it can't be just me. Right? That was never going to be sustainable. It wasn't long after that that we elected to, and by we, I mean specifically Emma, everyone who's no longer with us, took the point on creating our community participation guidelines, simply because we had to make this a thing that was elaborated, that we could point to, that we could document and understand. Right? We had a set of standards. What are they? Let's flesh that out. Step one in these processes, and I've done this for other communities now as well, step one is always the realization that you need to do this, the action, that sense of relief afterwards, and okay, now we need community norms. Right? And the community norms came along. We've iterated on them, we've worked on them over time. They have grown into process. Francesca and Konstantina can both attest to that. And one of the joys of having that grown into process is, first of all, it's not just me all the time. That's amazing. But the second part of it being not me all the time is that I am no longer a point of failure for the organization, right? If I start making bad decisions, right, Francesca is now empowered to step in and call me out on that, right? If I make enough bad decisions in a row, Francesca and Konstantina get to say, you don't get to make those decisions anymore. We have an organization set of standards now that is bigger than you, right? And the organization is safe as a result of that, not just because of you. That's critically important as we are now attempting to grow into expand our roles out to other parts of the other initiatives. You'll hear more about this, I think, tomorrow. We got some exciting news coming. But that understanding that it needs to grow out past us, that the structures of power that we want here can't be centralized either. That has gone on to inform our decisions about what community safety looks like. The idea that we can empower the communities around Mozilla to make these safety decisions for themselves, right? That we are going to give people the tools and agency to make their own communities safe outside of themselves, outside of our immediate view, our immediate supervision. That is, I think, the next step for this. To not only have an understanding that this is important, that this matters, that this drives our development in communities, but that safety is critical, and that safety, like decision making, needs to be something that is pushed to the margins, and that people are empowered at the edges of the organization to make those safety decisions. That's the next thing I'm really excited about. It's actually the thing I'm going to be spending the next year of my life probably working on. With Mozilla, you'll hear more about that shortly. But the notion that safety is a collective effort and that the tools can reflect that. And mutualism is going to be a part of that exercise. There's a lot more to say here, but I've gone over time already, and Francesca is starting to get that sort of very stony face where she's like, I like what you're saying, but I need you to stop, which happens a lot, which is my fault. I mean, she's not wrong. But
you can have a few minutes more.
I've just 2 more minutes. One of the things we have learned in this process is that, like, now we have an organization where diversity matters. Now we have an organization where inclusivity matters. And that has been showing up in our products, in our design decisions, in our communities, because ultimately software is just like an idea. Software is an idea that you take out of your head and turn into a machine. And if it's just your ideas, then you're probably just making software for you. And if it's just privileged, comfortable people making decisions, then it is just software for privileged, comfortable people. Right? And if we aspire to be more than that, if we aspire to be a global organization that has a global message and that seeks to affect global change, then we need to be people who can bring the voices of the world into our software and into our communities. And we are now competing against a world where open source is won. And if you are smart enough to land a patch in any piece of software, then you're smart enough to look into our forums, see if you want to be a part of it, and go somewhere else if you don't. This notion of safety now is something that, of community safety, of community engagement, this is our competitive advantage now as community leaders and as a place people want to be. It's been a great privilege for me to be here and be a part of it, but I'm by no means the only person who has built this. And yeah, I guess that's all how I want to wrap this up with. I'm very grateful to have been here to have done this, and we need to keep doing it because it turns out that matters a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Michael. That was a great talk, really. Thank you. And yes, I was, when I arrived, the CPD was already widely applied within Mozilla. And really one of the great things working here, there's always been support when there's always people to talk to when something happens. And we have a structure in place, and that's great. So I am going to look at a few questions. I think most of the questions we have can still be pushed to the end, so you can all answer at once. But I want to pass a few, the very important observation. The cat wants some love. That's one of the observations. I think that's about the Asa cat. And then there is a comment about your jersey, Michael. Let's say, look at Michael in that Nordic jersey. Nordic.
Let me do one thing, or I forget, just a bit of a throwback, which is I'm wearing my old Persona shirt today. If you recall Persona, I wore it for a special occasion, and I still actually believe, oddly enough, that you should be able to connect to the internet on your terms. So, thank you.
Great, thank you, Mike. Konstantina, do you have a question for Mike, or we can go forward with Konstantina and then we can ask all the questions at the end?
I don't have a question for Mike.
Good, good. Then we'll go ahead and then we will have the Q&A in the end. So now I will pass the word to Konstantina, who is going to talk about Mozilla Community and its future. Let me start screen share. 1 second.
All I have to say, it's very hard to come after in the conversation after Hoye. I will call you Hoye from now on, Michael.
I am very sorry.
What have you done?
Well, thanks, Francesca. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Asa. So we heard the story about how Mozilla started from Asa and what are the fundamentals in order to make a healthy community from Mike. So I wanted to talk a little bit where we are right now and what we want to do in the future, because Asa also touched a little bit about that, how community is important. And I want to double base on the fact on like why we believe that Mozilla is more important than ever. A community is more important than ever to Mozilla right now. My name is Konstantina. I am in Mozilla for the last 10 years, and I have been in various roles inside the community. And now I'm working on how we can unify our story and expand to new people. So Francesca, next slide, please. So what does community mean now? That is a very broad question. If you ask a lot of people what communities in general, you will get really different answers. And I wanted to make clear that that's what we believe here in Mozilla. It's 10,000s of people, because we do talk about 10,000s of people around the globe who believe in Mozilla, who contribute their time, insights, and creativity to help us succeed in our mission. So this is how we define community inside Mozilla right now. That can include staff, allies, core contributors, and volunteers that are watching this and work together to make Mozilla an awesome place. Now, Mozilla as a community is actually part of communities. We have different communities that they are project-based, support, community on MDN, Connect, translations, Firefox code contributions, hubs, which has a really awesome community, and have different communities that they are project-based. And those are structured around the projects and products across the organization. Next slide, please. And that's an opportunity for us. I am a 90s kid, so here's a Power Rangers reference for those of you who get it. Let's unify. Because we are stronger together as one community of many communities. So what we started doing in 2022, and this call is actually part of this initiative, is how we tell the story of Mozilla community externally all together. giving light to different parts of the organization and different people and how we make it awesome. But if we want to succeed, we need to be one Mozilla with one mission that we all believe in different structures and projects around the organization. So the team I'm working in and Francesca, in 2022, we started working with different community managers and people like Mike on how we can unify the community story across the organizations with other community managers, and how we can bring more people based on the story and ask them what they're interested in and send them to the right place of the organization. Next slide, please, Francesca. So what's next? We started doing that, and we need to keep on doing that. Work hasn't ended. I want to double down on what Asa said. We need to do more, and we need to go and talk with our users. We need our users to become our community. And in order to do that, we need to understand what they need from Mozilla. So what we want to do from 2023 on is not just wait for people to come to us, but go to people and understand what do they need from us, how we can create communities, and how we can create products that they are taking advantage of, and how we can be of users to the people. And we also need to keep on investing on our current communities and expand, because current communities and people, the volunteers we are around us, are the heart of Mozilla, are the people who are doing so much stuff and help us do. And we believe that they can help us grow what we want to do. I know it's very broad. I cannot bring yet objectives to this call because we're getting everything approved, but I wanted to emphasize on the message that we should go where the people are. We should connect with our users, and that's what we want to do. And that is what we're going to focus on 2023. I know I don't speak as much as Mike, but I wanted to emphasize on this message for 2023. And Francesca, now I can give the floor to yours for any kind of questions.
Okay. Stop sharing. So thank you very much, Konstantina, for that. Sorry. And let me go to the questions. So we have, so there are various questions about how we can, in a sense, do more things for the community. Like now the COVID is finished, are there going to be more local events planned for the future? And for example, where is Foxy? I believe you guys could benefit from more merchandising with him. And so if you can...
I cannot reply about Foxy. There is a lot of stuff going around with Fox pictures, but I don't know if there's going to be merchandise with Foxy, but it's a good suggestion. Thank you for the suggestion. I can reply to the first part of the question. Yes, as we're coming out of COVID, we want to have more events, and we also want to provide with our community and people who are collaborating with us on how we can speak better for Mozilla products and what's Mozilla mission. So this is part of the work on like helping and expanding our communities on how we can actually speak more and better. By the way, I want to emphasize that what we have seen is that we probably won't return fully to in-person stuff. Meaning what COVID taught us is that people also want to socialize in platforms that they are virtual and not necessarily only person to person. So we want to also experiment about like having events, but also what a non-physical and virtual connection look like via social media, via things like hubs, and how we can actually expand there.
Great, thank you. So we have some more questions about some most projects are very active on metrics. Any plan? Apologies. Any plan to promote more interaction with the community and developers to ease the path to contribution. I will add one thing here. Not all projects are on metrics. For example, hubs have their own platform, so they are not on metrics at the moment. Regarding, I think there are quite a few very active channels on metrics, and we also have a matrix space now where you can more easily find a directory for rooms. I think Mike maybe have something about that.
Do I? Oh. We do have recent creation on Matrix as Matrix Spaces. And one of the things we've built now is an introduction, a Mozilla space on our Matrix server, which gives you sort of quick access to some of the easier to find community rooms. In particular, the Android desktop and Mozilla in general community room are all available there. I'm not sure how this works out in the clients, but if you go into chat.mozilla.org and look on the left side there, you'll see a great big M, and that is the Mozilla public space where you can find all of the community sites listed there. There's actually about a dozen of them, including the Thunderbird team is all now there as well. It's nice. Recent development there is the K9 mail client. I don't know if you've seen the news there, but the venerable mobile mail client K9 is actually going to become the next Thunderbird client. And for Thunderbird's mobile presence, a lot of people are pretty excited about that. I'm very excited about getting rid of Gmail because it stinks. So I have some feelings. But there's also the Sumo team there and a number of other international Sumo groups for various different locales. So it's worth checking out.
I want to add, I think this is a wonderful development, this wayfinding. I think we often split our work up in ways that isn't obvious to a new potential contributor, and where to get started and where is the first room I should encounter. I recall one of the first things I did in my Mozilla involvement was to document the IRC channels and which one you might want to go into if you were new. And I think that this is a really valuable service that all of us can participate in. And one of the best ways we can participate is to join some of these channels that are more welcoming to new people, and not just the functional channels where we do our work. But by sharing the work of inviting new participants in, we do the project great value. And so we should split some of our time between our work channels and our sort of welcoming channels.
Thank you. And Konstantina, do you want to add something to that?
No, it's just I understand the need of matrix and the centralization of how we find channels, and there is a lot of work happening there. But also remember that there is also a need to go where the people are. So I understand also the need of hubs, because all the creators are happening on, I believe they're using Discord. I think they're using Discord to be also there. So there is a lot of work, as Mike and Asa said, on how we can centralize this and have in one place. But also remember that being where the people are in order to engage more people, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
I don't think that we want to, one of our longstanding tensions here is that it is actually making things easier to understand is not the same as making them better, right? Making them easy to manage and discoverability is not the same as making them better. The tendency there is the same as it is in any exercise of authority, is to want to centralize so that you can see it all and have it all. I think that we can't do that. I think that we need to meet people where they are, to empower people to make new spaces, because that's who we want to be, right? I think that one of the things we sort of have to reconcile ourselves to as Mozilla is that this is always going to be hard, right? Because making it easy is in some way a betrayal of what we aspire to be. Which sucks in a lot of cases. It's really, really hard to find people. And it's actually not great. And I don't know if there's a way to make it better without also, if you don't mind my saying so, making it somehow worse.
We have another question. I think two questions that's related. One is about how we involve users in product development, and the other one about feedback, about is the future on the feedback engine, collecting aggregated feedback from non-Mozilla community too. I think the answer there, we do have a space where we invite people to bring feedback about all Mozilla products, not just Firefox, and that is Mozilla Connect. You can go there, submit your ideas, and submit your feedback, and we also having kind of events where our developers go there and ask for feedback directly from the community, and you can put your feedback there. If you have an idea for a feature of a product, you can also add it there, and other people can vote on it and add their own comments to it. So there's definitely a space there. So that's my answer to that question. If someone wants to expand a bit on that.
I would just encourage you, if you haven't taken a look at the Connect platform, please do. It's an exciting, relatively new space for our community. We have tried and failed over 20 plus years to build a good sort of product-focused community, the people who want to shape the future direction of the products we build. And we started off trying to do it in Bugzilla, and that just didn't work. And we set up other solutions that either became toxic or they became what I would call black holes, where ideas went in and nothing ever came out. Connect is a dedicated platform with a great team behind it and a wonderful leader, John. And I think you'll find participation there is both welcoming and fun, and hopefully engaging regularly with product managers and engineers and others at Mozilla to help figure out where our products should go. I'm very excited about it, so I'm going to do, take this moment just to promote John's effort in the Connect platform. Do check it out, and I hope to see you there.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Mark.
I feel like I want to tell the story of some of the failed efforts in the past and like what we found inside them.
Oh God, no.
Yeah. Can we have this? So
we have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
We have 3 minutes. What is our therapy budget for the year? Have we spent all of that yet? Okay. I was the person because I'm some sort of psychological janitor here, I was the person who got sent to look at the data for both input.mozilla.org and the earlier Etherpad instance, the wide open unauthenticated Etherpad instance. Now, I'm sure you've all seen the internet, so I'm sure it will not surprise you to learn that exciting things happen in unauthenticated freeform text fields on the internet. The reason that we're very much happier with Connect and how that's going and how positive and useful and supportive it's become is partly that back when we were using Ethernet or Etherpad, I should say, Etherpad for collecting feedback and doing engagements, we also accidentally end up being home to the world's largest collection of adult Pokemon fan fiction. Like that was just a thing we were accidentally hosting for a while. I read all of the feedback that came back through the input.mozilla.org tool back when that existed before Connect. And an astounding number of the pieces of feedback we got from people there were from people who wanted to get extraordinarily intimate with Foxy. We've never told Foxy that. Like we've sheltered Foxy from that because Foxy doesn't need to know, right? But if we had decided
to know.
We made the executive decision not to pivot to that line of business. I think it was a good one. But that was like, on the process of having your metrics gamed, that was a possibility. It was in play. We made the right, human in the loop decision not to pivot our business in that direction. But there we were. So yes, the forums that we have now are not only healthier and more useful, but also less prone to make you feel like a lunatic reading them than the ones we've had in the past. So there we are.
I can just say that So, well, nowhere in time, but like I totally agree with both Mike and Asa. Like the things that we have seen in the past, I don't want to see again. I remember we did this campaign for a product to get feedback. And after that campaign, we decided to never have an open GitHub again with OpenGit issues because people were so graphic. They were describing porn very graphically on GitHub issues, and it was so bad that GitHub had to close our repos and say nobody goes in here anymore because this is terrible. So we convinced them to reopen them and make the repos private and create actually forms in order to get that kind of feedback, so we don't get that again. So trust us when we say it is very nice to have a moderated platform that you can actually apply CPG to and that you can get valuable feedback into, and not just having random weirdos of the internet make you feel very, very uncomfortable with your day life.
So we actually have a question on how we can make bug reporting easier. I can say that during a fox fooding campaign, when we have this big testing campaign that you can find in our community portal, it's much easier to submit a bug because we give you a form and you just fill out the form. That is much easier. How we can make it easier, like day to day? That is definitely a question. I would say that if you pop in one of our Matrix channel, maybe in the one general, and you post the issue there, probably someone can come and help you. But yes, that's definitely a good question, I would say, to which I don't have an answer.
I would like to add to that, which is there is sort of a minimum threshold for a valuable bug report, for a bug report that will be something that an engineer can use to make the product better. And that threshold is kind of high. No matter how simple we make the tools, we need certain pieces of information to make that happen. And so we need to teach people what that is and build better tools, of course. But one of the best ways, I think, to get your bug into the system is just as Francesca said, talk to someone who's already experienced and have them either walk you through the process, in which case doing that a couple of times, you'll have the knowledge to do it on your own, or even asking for help in filing that bug report. We can't make it so simple that it becomes, less useful to the engineers who live in Bugzilla.
Thank you. So we are a bit over time, but I will say that if you want to do a future video where we kind of guide people on how to make a good bug report, that is something I would be very happy to support. And yeah, for now, I don't think we can take any more questions, but we do have a Matrix community channel, so you can post question there. Mike is there, Konstantina is there, I am there. I don't know if Asa is there, but we will be happy to answer your question there in the future. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming. It was very, very great, very entertaining. And we will have another call in January. I will send out more information about that soon. So I hope to see you then. Bye, everyone. Thank you very much, Andy, for the support.